really interesting, as we know that we have students from different backgrounds, different families, different cultures. The way of learning, their way of learning is really, really different. So we as teachers need to be prepared with the right activities, the right strategies, and the right material in order to be able to meet all our students' needs. Thank you so much, IELTA Kenya. As I said, we are so happy for your first international webinar. And I want to congratulate to all the IELTA Kenya members who are working in this project that this is to.
Thank you, President Dr. Neil. Kindly, everyone, please mute so that we can be able to have a good meeting. And now I welcome our speaker of today with our first webinar, who is Teacher Immaculate Ajiambo. She's a teacher of English, TESOL, and she's a writer and translator, and also Fulbright Teachers Excellence and Achievement 2024 Fellow. Welcome, Teacher Immaculate. You can start on. Thank you.
Thank you for the warm welcome. My name is... Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of you. Welcome to the webinar. My name is Immaculate Ajiambo Nafa. As you've heard from the introduction, I am a teacher, I'm a writer, I'm a translator, and I'm passionate about transforming lives through teaching. So I'll just share my screen. Kindly enable me to share the screen. So as my screen is being enabled for sharing, I'll introduce myself further in regards to this topic. I teach in Shikadabu Secondary School, which is in Likoni Sub-County, Mombasa County. The school population is 1,400 students. We are 6 teachers of English, and I teach from grade 9 all the way to grade 12. A normal class size goes between 56 students to 64 students. So all these students come in with diverse backgrounds, and I think I'm still unable to share my screen. Okay. All these students come in with diverse backgrounds in terms of their skills, in terms of their linguistic abilities, their cognitive skills and autonomy. Okay. I think I'll just proceed. Oh my. Yeah, so when my students show up in class and I set my objectives for a particular lesson or a session, I always think about each and every one of them. And in this way, this takes me back to what you're going to be discussing today, the inclusive teaching. And in part of my presentation, I'll be sharing with you some of the approaches that I work with and some of the approaches other teachers work with. So inclusive teaching is a situation where classroom practices, design, and ecosystem ensure that there is equal opportunities for all students, regardless of their physical, cognitive, affective, and cognitive differences. And in inclusive teaching, we get to see that one of its importances is to maximize each learner's potential. It's every teacher's desire to see every student getting their best, scoring their best scores, being able to express themselves, especially in the English language. At the same time, another importance of inclusive teaching is to promote equality of opportunity. Here, you allow each and every student to participate in the exercises and activities of that particular lesson. Lastly, it's to foster a sense of community among the language learners, whereby these students can connect and feel part of the class, feel part of the activity that is taking part and part of the learning. And for that reason, we can conclude and say that inclusive teaching matters for learners, teachers, and the society. So some theoretical frameworks that work in the inclusive teaching is the affordance theory. With the affordance theory here, we see that communication is a multimodal process. In that, there is an interplay with semiotic elements. So we have to input pictures, we have to input audio, we have to embrace the touch, things that students can touch in our dealing. Then we have the sociocultural theory, which places a strong emphasis on how social interactions and cultural circumstances shape learning. So here, learning is not only what happens in the classroom, but everything that happens to an individual. That's how they get to learn. So it's social and it's cultural at the same time. So as a result, students can participate in fulfilling social interactions and co-construct knowledge with their peers. Because we say that language is productive, and from language, we are able to create several things out of an infinite set. According to constructivism, which is another theoretical framework, we say that learning occurs when students actively create their own knowledge through social and environmental interactions. So I'm going to be basing our discussion on these three theories. The affordance theory that looks at communication as a multimodal process, the social cultural theory that emphasizes on the social and cultural interactions towards learning, then the constructivism theory, which looks at how we co-construct knowledge. So from here, some of the pedagogical approaches for inclusive teaching are the UDL. Let me just confirm whether I'm able to share my screen now. Good.
Hello, could you make the speaker a co-host so that we're able to share the screen?
Yeah, so the pedagogical approaches for inclusive teaching. I hope so the ELT practitioners can work to reduce these obstacles. The obstacles here are the linguistic differences, the cognitive differences, background differences where these students are coming from, their neighborhoods in terms of their neighborhoods, their linguistic abilities, and to give students equal opportunities to improve their language abilities, express their thoughts, and engage in meaningful communication by implementing inclusive techniques through the UDL, Universal Design Learning. We have the culturally responsive teaching, the inclusive language use, scaffolded instruction, flexible assessment, and accommodation. Then we have the differentiated instruction. I will be looking at each and every one of them in the next slides. So for the UDL, this is an educational framework that is very flexible for teachers, whereby you can start by asking yourself the essential question about that particular lesson you're going to be working on with your students. And for you to be able to answer the essential question effectively, there are three guiding principles that you will be looking at. And the first principle is the representation. I hope you can see my cursor here. So, sorry. We have the representation. This is where you provide information in multiple formats to cater for differences in terms of the learning styles, how these students learn. So you can bring in a video to cater for those who are visual. You can bring in items in class. Let's say you're talking about plural and singular forms. So you come in with several pens and you let them touch, and they're able to see that this is one pen, these are two pens, these are three pens. Then the second guiding principle is the engagement. How do these learners engage with one another? So here you'll be providing a learning environment that will cater for this. So you can either work with group work, or you allow the students to do it individually or in terms of pairs. So they will be able to engage with the work. And at the same time, as a teacher, as a practitioner, as a ELT practitioner, you'll be moving around to facilitate and helping these learners that need your input. So you can, by moving around, you'll be able to notice every learner's need. This one needs more explanation on this particular topic, more explanation on this particular item we are working on. So you give them more information, or you even spark their imagination so that they are able to think and apply and even try and do the speaking. Then the third principle is the action and expression. This allows learners to express themselves. So as a teacher, when you open them up to the option of either presenting their work in terms of writing, those who are good in writing will be motivated. In fact, they will even write for you 4 pages or 5 pages. Then those who are into videos, they can come up with short skits to just express their idea. And in this way, you'll be tapping into their unique differences, and at the same time enabling them to learn. So for the UDL, some of the examples are providing captions or transcripts for audios and videos if you're teaching using that. You can also use the graphic organizers and mind maps. So as you take your learners through a particular topic, you can break them down into some points so that they're able to follow through and contribute. So these are called the graphic organizers, either using pictures or you can just use symbols, and they'll be able to do this. You can allow for flexible grouping and collaboration. That is the second principle of engagement. Offer digital interactive activities. For the digital interactive activities, if you're well equipped or you have the resources in your school, you're able to use software such as Mentimeter. There is a software known as Kahoot. Students are able to interact using these softwares, and they'll be able to learn as much. I'll be sharing a link with all the softwares and how you can be able to use them in your classes if you want to use the digital interactive activities. And at the same time, even for those schools that are limited in terms of digital resources, you can come up with a way. I'll also be sharing it towards the end of the presentation. So for the UDL, basically with these 3 principles, you'll be able to answer the essential question at the end of the lesson. What should the learner have gotten? By the end of the lesson, what should we have achieved as a class? So you can use assistive technologies and accessibility features in digital learning platforms to accommodate for learners with disabilities. We come to the culturally responsive teaching. So here, the instructor should be able to be culturally sensitive, because your students come from diverse backgrounds. I talk of my 56 students in grade 12. All these 56 come from various cultures. And when I'm taking them through a topic such as environment, they all look at environment in different ways. And so I should be able to be sensitive about it and to make the session effective and objective. I am guided by some of the questions, and here they are. I asked them, do you have a similar experience in your culture? So after sharing a particular culture, or after sharing something up with them that comes from a culture that is not similar to theirs, I ask them whether they have the similar experience. Secondly, what is equivalent to this in your culture? And the students will be able to share what is equivalent to that particular topic we were discussing. And in this way, their speaking abilities are enhanced. Their critical thinking is also being worked on. Lastly, the other question I usually ask is, what happens in your culture? What happens in your culture? If this and this happens, so what happens in your culture? So you, as an instructor, you can also use appropriate cultural materials that students can relate to. So after working on your research, you'll be able to know, this is what I'm able to present to my students. This is what the students are going to appreciate, or this is something new I'll be sharing with them. For example, a teacher can form groups that have students coming from various races and nationalities. And in this way, learners will be able to learn among themselves. They will have enough time to speak among themselves. They will even come up with stories that speak about the people in their cultures, or the people where they come from. An example, I attended a session in a school known as Pleasant Valley in Chico, California, and the teacher was teaching Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe. The setting is in Nigeria, and most of the students have not traveled to Nigeria and to Africa. So the much that they know will not be enough for them to grasp the content of the book. But with the beauty of literature, it allows us to move across the globe. So what happened is, the teacher is that she created a cultural presentation about Nigeria by getting videos from YouTube, talking to people who come from Nigeria. And from there, she was able to come up with a presentation that presented Nigeria. And this sparked the learners' interest in learning more about Things Fall Apart. In fact, they had a lot of questions that the teacher thought of. I should be able to invite some people who come from Yoruba and who come from Igbo to just share with us more about this. So when we are culturally responsive, learners are able to know that, wow, our culture is being appreciated. Wow, there are people who are interested in knowing about us. And in this way, their language acquisition, their English language acquisition will be growing bit by bit. The next approach is to use inclusive language. So here we avoid the gendered language where it's the she and he, businessman, businesswoman, and just use the gender neutral terms. And every learner will feel part of that lesson. Every learner will feel part of that lesson. Secondly, we can provide language options. When you're teaching learners, we can provide explanations about certain vocabulary. We can provide glossaries, and at the same time, we can have translations on particular things. Actually, I love using this approach in most of my classes because some of the vocabularies that we encounter in the English language don't have a direct equivalent to Kiswahili. So before I get to them, I find translation from one of the staff members who comes from their community, and I bring for them various translations from their languages, and in this way they get to know the meaning of the meaning of the vocabulary, and now they are able to apply it correctly when they are when they're expressing themselves in English. Thirdly, we can use the cultural inclusive terms. For example, when referring to holidays or traditions such as the winter break, so instead of talking of Christmas break, we can talk of the winter break to cut across our cultural differences. Lastly, is to respect the preferred pronouns. You can ask the students to just introduce themselves. My name is Immaculate Ajiambo, and I am a she. My name is so I am I'm a he, or I'm a she. In this way, all learners will feel part of the group. And even as you go on with your interactions, it's going to enable them feel safe and contribute effectively. So we move to the other approach, the scaffolded instruction. Here is where a teacher breaks down tasks from complex tasks into manageable steps through the graphic organizers or sentence frames and guided practice to support the learners at different proficiency levels. So you're teaching them about the verb phrase, and because not all learners learn at the same speed, and some learners are not academically motivated, others are just there to pass and go home, others are there to be in school for the sake of being there, but you can make them interested in that particular lesson by just breaking the task down. Let's say, give an example of a sentence that has a verb phrase in it. Definitely, we have a subject, verb, and object that makes a sentence. A sentence is not complete without a verb. There must be an action. So for those students who are still unable to identify verbs, so you can start by telling them, mention, what did you do yesterday? Then they tell you, I slept, I ate. You start from there. That's the first breakdown. Then you move to the other bit by telling them, okay, now the action and the action that you did is what you call a verb phrase. And we can have 2 verbs or 3 verbs, 4 verbs following each other. These verbs are this and this and this. So here the learners will be able to learn that grammar bit and will be able to apply, enabling them to acquire the grammar and at the same time enhance their skills. Second but not least, we have the flexible assessment or accommodation. So with flexible assessment here, it refers to being able to accommodate every learner's output. You can do this as an instructor, you can do this by looking at individual assessments. How has this student performed individually?
Yes, sir.
So from there, you can move to individualized instruction. Okay, you can move to individualized instruction where you just give these students extra coaching or extra time to actually understand what was happening with the test that you just gave out. You can do a group assessment. You can do peer assessment where learners are able to review each other's work. And in this, with the peer assessment, as an instructor, you can come up with a rubric and let the learners know what they should be looking for in their peers' work. And even apart from that, you can also come up with a rubric with the learners themselves. Ask them, so what do you think makes up a good writing? An imaginative composition. What do you think makes up a good imaginative composition? Then they will give you several points. You can use those points as rubrics. Take them back to the learners and ask them, now assess yourselves. Has your peer been able to be imaginative? Use the correct vocabularies that we've talked in our previous session or so. So in this way, peer assessment enforces their interaction. They feel part of the group. They're able to connect and they're able to learn as much from each other, because what they read in their peers' work is not what they would have been taught by the teacher. Then we have the self-assessment. This one can also be guided by the use of a rubric. The differentiated instruction, this is how children learn best. So with the differentiated instruction is where a teacher provides options in terms of their expression, options in terms of their product, process, and even the environment. So differentiated instruction is important because learners and content must connect in order for learning to happen. We say that differences matter. And teachers who practice differentiation in their classrooms design lessons based on the students' learning styles, the group of students' interests. So you can group your students by their interests. You can also ask them to group themselves. And in this way, you'll be embracing the differentiated instruction. So we say that teachers can differentiate instruction through the content, process, product, and the learning environment. So the challenges of using the differentiated instruction will come in terms of unpredictability of teaching. We can also have, it can be time consuming. The 40 minutes that we have in our teaching, in Kenya, we have 40 minutes. And with 40 minutes, it's not, I don't want to say it's impractical, but it depends with how the teacher plans himself or herself in ensuring that learners are able to come up with, are able to connect the content and their output. So I just want to give examples of, yeah, so the differentiated content example here is a teacher can give an exercise such as match the vocabulary words with the definition. This is in terms of content. Read a passage and answer the related questions. Think of a situations that happen to a character in a story. Oh no. Sorry for that. I've lost my screen. My screen just went off. I'm unable to even see my notes.
Sorry, Immaculate, let me check it out.
Okay.
What about now? Because you're able to see. The screen is visible.
You can, oh my God.
Are you able to see now?
From my end, my screen is blank. Let me just.
Okay, maybe you can continue from your own notes as we can see, we can follow.
Ask mom to put her password for me. I can barely see my other. There we go. Sorry for that. So I was at the, think of a situation that happened to a character in a story and write about a different outcome This one is yeah. So with the differentiated process, you can provide text for visual learners. You can allow for auditory learners to read the story aloud, and in this way they will be able to follow through and gain as much. You can create interactive assignments or find them online. So here you can direct the student to work on the assignments online. So the processes of acquiring the language will vary.
Differentiated content examples match vocabulary words, definitions, read a passage of text, answer related questions, think of a situation that happened to a character in the story, and write a different outcome. Create a presentation summarizing the story. Differentiated process examples provide text for visual learners, allow auditory learners to read the story aloud, or hear it read. Create interactive assignments, or find them online. Product examples, create graphics of them. Book/story, give an oral report, build a diorama illustrating the story. Differentiated learning environment examples, break some students into groups to discuss the assignment, allow students to read individually if preferred, create quiet spaces with limited distractions.
So we have the
According to Dornier and Murphy, 2003 visual aids are an essential part of language learning, helping to promote engagement among students, enhance comprehension, and reinforce language concepts, such as photographs, charts, infographics, movies, physical items, and multimedia presentations. Implementing inclusive teaching in ELT. Multimodal approaches. Students can express in ELT. Multimodal approaches. Multimodal approaches.